You're listening to Talking Law, the podcast where business owners just like you discover how to avoid legal landmines and build value using smart legal tips.
Hi, it's Joanna here, and welcome back to Talking Law, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, today we have part 2 of our 3-part series, which is all about the most important steps, in fact, 6 steps, to increasing the multiplier of your business, i.e. increasing the value of your business exponentially. And in order to talk about this topic, we have on board Marc Johnston from Sherlaws Group and Nathan Williams from Customer Return. Now, if you have not listened to part 1 of this 3-part series, I highly recommend you head back and go to the episode just prior to this one that you're listening to right now, so that you can hear us talk about what it means to increase the multiplier of your business and why you would care about that anyway. And as we delve also in that episode into step 1, which was all about talent, capability, and culture. Now, in this episode, we're continuing on with our 6 steps to increase the multiplier of your business, launching right into step number 2. So let's take it away. Okay, Marc and Nathan, I just want to say a very big thank you for coming back for part 2 of our 2-part series, all about the 6 steps to increase the multiplier of your business. And of course, we had so much to say about this topic that in part 1 we got to step 1. But the aim is to try and get through steps 2 to 6 in this episode. Guys, do you feel up to the challenge?
Absolutely, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Definitely.
Oh, look, I'm loving this discussion, and that is clear by the fact that we only got through step 1 in part 1. So in step 2, let's just launch straight into it. And just for any of our listeners out there who missed part 1, maybe go back, listen to that first, because we started up off with the first step of the 6 steps to increase the multiplier of your business as talent, capability, and culture. So we've done that. We've ticked that off. If you're interested in hearing more about that, well, you better head back to episode 1. But now we are talking about step 2. So guys, hit me with it. What is the second step to increasing the multiplier of your business?
Thanks, Joanna. The second step is to create product innovation in your way of doing business. So too many businesses we see out there, especially in the SME world, don't actually invest enough time in continuing to innovate their product and systematize the way in which they do things. Mm-hmm. So what that means is you can get caught with a product that isn't ready to respond to market changes or events like COVID. So that ability to have an innovation mindset around your product means that you're constantly changing your value proposition and restructuring your product so that you can create the most valuable revenue. And an example is taking, a product that's got a large transactional revenue component, which is the customer only buys it once or twice, and changing that to a recurring revenue where they're on an annuity product base, so that you've got reoccurring revenue, because that's 3 times as valuable. And that's where Nathan spends a lot of his time with their clients, moving that product based from transactional to reoccurring.
How do you do that, Nathan? Can you step us through what it is? How is it that you move the business from that once off into the recurring?
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. I think part of it is certainly looking at what's the totality of the issue or the problem that the client is trying to solve. So what are they trying to get done for their clients? And then once you've understood the totality of what the clients of the business are trying to get done, then reverse engineering that and effectively productizing it. So as opposed to a once-off delivery, whether it's a once-off product or a once-off service, it's looking at stepping it out over 12 months, for example, and dealing with issues in a descending order from most to slightly less important, and looking at what needs to be delivered, perhaps whether it's face-to-face or over the phone, and what can be done digitally, and just look at different means of service delivery as opposed to a once-off. Because I'm of the belief that if people only get something once, be it around a workshop or once off service delivery, it's not enough to change behaviour. So you really need to look at what's the totality of what the client's trying to get done, what can be delivered face-to-face or as an event versus what needs to be stepped out, be it over the phone, online, video, etc. So different means of delivery and making that subscription cost not so high that people don't engage with it in the first case. So it's understanding the pitch or the message, how to then productise the delivery of it, and then looking at the pricing that makes sense. So it's scalable, so you get more users within a business or more individual users of a particular product.
Yeah, and it's such a good point that you make. And I think many businesses perhaps don't understand the multiplier effect of having recurring revenue that we're talking about here. But certainly most businesses I deal with understand the benefits of having this recurring revenue income stream coming into their business. But it's one thing to understand that. It's one thing to understand it. It's another thing to be able to work out how to apply it. So can you give us an example of, maybe sort of a simple case study, an example of a business that didn't have a recurring revenue component and how you're able to turn that into recurring revenue for them?
Marc, I might divert to you on that one, sorry.
Yeah, no, sure, of course. A really good sector where this plays out a lot is the financial services sector, where we've had because of superannuation introduced in 1992, we've had the emergence of the financial planning or the wealth management industry. And where that had typically evolved from was stockbroking and or accounting. So what we see with a lot of the second and third tier stockbroking companies is they've traditionally had stockbrokers that buy and sell stocks on behalf of their clients. So if I ring up my stockbroker and say I want to buy $10,000 worth of BHP, well, that's $10,000 worth of revenue into the business, but it's only worth 1 time's revenue on the balance sheet. So that $10,000 is worth $10,000 on their balance sheet.
Yep.
If I speak to one of their financial advisors and say I want to become an advice client, and that company charges me $10,000 per year for that advice, during which I may or may not buy BHP, that $10,000 sits as $30,000 on their balance sheet. So it's 3 times more valuable. So what we've seen a lot of the stockbroking firms do is try and change their product mix or innovate their products and their offerings to what's called wealth management services, Wealth Plus, things like that, so that they can transfer their existing clients off trading or transactional. I want to buy stocks because you can go to CommSec or there's plenty of websites who do that cheaply, and move them to advice-based Wealth Plus, wealth management processes, because it's much more valuable, because it creates an annuity income.
Yeah.
Because every year I need advice.
It's also a more holistic service, though, isn't it?
It's better for the client.
To think, more broadly about what it is that you can provide that's value, not just as a once-off, but, that deep value that a client will want to continue paying for.
Exactly.
But therein lies the issue of, it really does. I love, you've called this product innovation, but it does require innovation. That's the point. There has to be some creativity and thought. And
that's a really important point you make, Joanna, because what you've got to do is have it as a part of the way you do business. So you can't go to the Hunter Valley or Mornington Peninsula for an offsite, or to the Napa Valley if you're in San Francisco, and think about how we can do product differently. What it has to be is through client surveys, internal processes, whereby on a monthly basis you're looking at feedback, real-time data around what people are buying, where the market's moving, and the value proposition you can create. So it's got to be part of doing business. It's got to be scheduled on a monthly basis using real-life data, because that way you can control or create the return, as opposed to most people do it as an afterthought, at the strategic offsite, and it doesn't really change anything in the business. You have a bunch of good ideas on the whiteboard, but nothing actually happens at implementation level. So the importance of having data and processes and having an ongoing feedback loop internally and externally, you'll learn much more from your clients than you will from an internal conversation. And critically internally, it can't be the partners or the directors. It's got to be through the whole business. It's got to be people that are speaking to clients at delivery and service level and support level, and they have to have a voice to provide that unvarnished feedback, because you're better off responding to the market quickly rather than reacting way too late.
And just on that, I love that example, Mark, because it does bring to light a client example where we did some work with a financial services dealer group. They're one of the bank line dealer groups, and this is not that long after the GFC. And the short version of the story is that they had some real hesitation about reaching out to their clients at that time because it was just post the GFC and things weren't going that great on the markets. But what ended up happening was we got engaged, ended up doing it was around about 1,500 client feedback surveys that effectively asked about 3 key areas of the business around product, service, delivery, those sorts of areas. And while they in some ways or in many ways feared what the responses might be, what came out of that is they got an uplift in retained, repeat and also referral business, such that the return on investment on our engagement was about 7 times.
Wow.
And within about 3 to 6 months of the conclusion of that engagement. So the point being that often businesses, I find, can sometimes fear reaching out to their clients when things aren't going great. But that's actually when you want to do that. That's the time to do it, because you'd rather hear the problem, be able to respond to it, than not know. And so, they were looking for new clients at this GFC time, but the real gold was already in their database.
I love it.
We just gave them a framework by which to do that professionally, independently. So we got feedback that they otherwise wouldn't have got if, for example, the planner had rung them up, because most people don't tell the service provider because they're trying to be nice, or they just don't want to divulge, but they'll vote with their feet later and not go back. So when it comes to recurring revenue, while they didn't develop a whole lot of new products, they did increase the number of products or services that the clients were buying. So they got more repeat, more retained, and more referral business. So often recurring revenue, you can just be getting more out of who's already in your database, not just by product innovation, but by getting them buying more, getting them coming back, getting them referring.
Yeah. And I guess when we're talking about increasing the multiplier, it is also then about having a system around that to show that this is something that you can, that isn't a once-off, something that's happening, iteratively in the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
That, as Nathan said, so that it's repeatable. So you just don't do it once, but you actually make it part of your business practices. Yeah. Every month you'll touch a certain amount of clients, have a strategic review quarterly, so that it is part of how you do business.
So I love this. So this is about product innovation, and recurring revenue is about constant iterations. I think some of the things we're canvassing here are just so important, because many businesses, as I said before, businesses generally get it. Recurring revenue is the thing that they're all out there fighting for. But it's quite often it's done exactly as you say, sort of in a silo. And what we're talking about here is developing it by constant iteration, as you're constantly testing it and making sure you're getting feedback from the market along the way regularly, and doing that in a systemised way. And to
Nathan's point there, it's unvarnished feedback. Because as Nathan said, if someone who's delivering to the client rings up the client, they will say nice things. Most people are nice people, so having an independent third do it is absolutely critical, because they will say things to you or to your clients that they won't say to you. So having someone else do that is really important, and having your frontline delivery staff trained to listen to clients. Most people train on, if the client says this, say this back. Or what we've actually got to do, if a client says this, ask them why they're asking you that. What more could they drill down on it and actually get them to tell you more, because those little bits of information are worth gold to your business, because the clients will tell you what you need to do and iterate and innovate in your business.
Yeah, and the follow-up is really important. And I've heard Marc speak about this before, that once you've got that feedback, often the next step, and again this applies to product innovation, is the most important. And a lot of businesses don't do this. They might gather feedback, whether it's themselves or by using an independent provider, but then there's not an obvious next step from that they then implement. So in terms of making it part of the way you do business, the next step would obviously be effectively going to individual clients and saying, thanks so much, here's what we've heard, here's what we've learned, here's what we'd like to explore doing, and then explore with the clients, what products or services could then best serve them moving forward, and almost take like a research-based mentality, to that process. So you're gathering that feedback and then using it to implement on new products and services.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. We're talking about something here that can completely change a business, but I just want to throw in there, sometimes it can be easier than it might look. So I do a lot of work in recruitment, and one of the simple ways to move to increasing recurring revenue is to increase a temp placement where you might just be in perm placement. So there's some sort of, I guess, simple examples, but what we're talking about here obviously is looking at things in a more innovative way, but I just mean there can be simple ways to look at this as well sometimes.
Yes.
All right, brilliant. So let's move on to step number 3 then, of the 6 steps to increase the multiplier of your business. What's step number 3?
So step number 3 is product extension. And this is where, steps 1 and 2 are really important for a business, that talent, capability and culture, and product innovation and systematization. But where the rubber really hits the road and the highest impact for an SME are the next 2 steps, which are product extension and distribution channels, because they are where the highest impact and the highest return on investment. They're the most valuable things that an SME business owner can focus their attention on. Yeah, so it's step 1. Well, let's talk about product first before we get to channel extension. So if we go back to our business we've talked about, which is a $3 million EBITDA business times 3 as a multiplier, with a $9 million enterprise value. Well, that $3 million profit is probably coming off the back of $9 million revenue if it's a 30% margin business, which a lot of SMEs are. So if that $9 million revenue is all from one product, that business is less valuable than if it has 2 products doing $4.5 million each. So just at a risk management level and at an evaluation level, a business with 2 products is more valuable than a business with 1, because the market might go away. There might be some, the market can change and you've got nothing to fall back on. Whereas if you have 2 products doing $4.5 million, well, one of them might suffer from COVID, but one of them might actually be enhanced through COVID. So you have that inherent risk management. And of course, the other thing to recognise, the second step to recognise when we look at product, is that if you're doing $4.5 million of 2 products, well, we could probably get those to $9 million anyway. So if you spent $9 million, getting revenue, $9 million revenue for 1 product, we can probably increase that $4.5 million to 9 anyway. So at a second step, there's that capacity for growth. But where it really comes into play is by creating product extension opportunities. Because as you roll them out, you get to leverage the brand and the value proposition that we're creating for our clients. So the simplest example of that is Disney. It started with a comic strip in 1934. And Walt Disney was serophobic, which means allergic to mice. So for the entrepreneurs out there, it doesn't necessarily mean something you love. He hated mice, but he saw a gap in the marketplace as an entrepreneur. So he started with a comic strip. His second product, his P2, was cartoon characters. Their P3 was toys. Their 4th product was theme parks. Their 5th product was TV and movies. And in fact, for over 18 movies, they have the Touchstone brand, because Disney's brand is fun and safe for family. And their P6 are cruise ships, and they're the world's 2nd largest cruise line operator. So across that product extension, they've extended off that value proposition and created significant uplift in revenues. So as a business extends out its products, what it creates is more opportunities, and your products you extend are often more valuable from a margin perspective than your initial product. So your core product can be sometimes, where it's competition and it's commoditized because you're in a saturated market. But as you extend products out, what you tend to do is identify new market opportunities. So as you're entering a new market, the margins and the profitability is much higher because there's not as much competition. So it allows you to continually enter into higher margin areas and growth markets. And 3M is another example of a company that, 3M actually stands for Minnesota Mines and Manufacturing.
I did not know that. Well,
and 3M is no longer in Minnesota, and they're no longer in mining, and they manufacture the odd thing. But what companies who extend their products do is they actually continually, as I said, create those high margin, high profit growth areas. and they're actually able to piggyback that growth. So the importance is, if you've got an existing product today, when we look at creating a P2 and a P3, one of the contexts or the key criteria will be, where is there a hyper growth market? So if you were providing mining services back in 2001 to the mining industry, you had a hyper growth 15 years because of the resources boom. So what it can do is get you thinking entrepreneurially about, where are the growth markets we can leverage our key skills and our key competencies, and how can we package that differently?
One of the risks, though, of adding extra businesses, extra products, product extension, can be that the management team has a diffuse focus.
Correct.
So where is the point that you think, do you think there's a point? What are some of the telltale signs that maybe you're not big enough, or you're not ready, or versus you are?
Yeah, and look, that's a really great question, Joanna. One of the first things when someone talks to us about, I want to create a new product, the first thing we ask them is this a bright, shiny new thing to distract from you haven't fixed product one? So often we'll see firms, especially in services, they'll open up, if they're an accounting firm, they'll open financial planning or other things because they haven't fixed the underlying organic issues in that. So that's a really good question. So what we need to do is have product one, or the foundation product, really solid and operating, because if as a leadership team or as a shareholding team, if you're working in your existing product and you're actually on the tools delivering it, your business is worth less than a competitor who has paid staff to do that. So what we need to do is create the capacity in the business to allow the senior leadership team to actually get into these higher value functions like product creation. So if it's an accounting firm and you're doing 2,000 hours a year on the tools in accounting, well, if we can release you to spend 600 hours a year creating a new product and have someone else deliver the accounting, that 600 hours a year is worth $4,000 an hour, because you're worth much more working on your multiplier. So as a shareholder, you're actually worth more off the tools, and your business is worth more, and you can create that compound growth. So we absolutely need to make sure we have the underlying business working and operating. But this is where critically one of the mindset shifts when you think about the valuation multiplier and how to go up the range is, if you're thinking as an income person or a person working in the business, sometimes you can say, well, we don't have the skills to do that. Whereas as soon as you're thinking about your share price as an investor, so what we talk to owners about is actually let's shift your mindset as an investor. And if you own a business that has an opportunity to create a product and it's a hyper growth market, well, we then talk to them about following what they do in Silicon Valley. So what a venture capitalist does in Silicon Valley is they recognize that 98.4% of the returns come from the asset class, not the individual company. So when we look at where the hyper growth is, we'll say, well, what product do we need to create into a hyper growth or a higher growth market? What's the margin we'll make out of that? And then thirdly, what's the capability required? Because what an investor does or a venture capitalist do, they say there's a growth opportunity there. I would rather hire or joint venture or bring those skills into the business to run that, because I don't want to, put as you said, Joanna, rightly put that at risk. I would rather hire on credential, not potential. So the conversation we'll have with the owners is, we've identified a significant product extension opportunity. We've done our research, and there's an opportunity to capture some of the market. And there are two choices. We can skill up the existing leadership team, or we can bring in an additional, the right competencies from the market, and that will accelerate that growth and critically not distract the original leadership team from the business. So adding that competency into the business, or that skill set to prosecute the strategy, is what a shareholder would do. And it's a mindset shift. If we think as an owner, if we think as someone who works in the business in a partnership, we might be worried or concerned about that. But if we're thinking as a shareholder, well, of course, if we owned BHP on the stock market and they had an opportunity to create a new mine in Chile, but the leadership team didn't want to recruit someone who was really good to make the mine make a lot of money, as shareholders, we'd throw rocks at them at their AGM. So we need to think like a business and say, there's an opportunity there. let's bring the right skills in because it's going to make us more money as a shareholder. The other critical thing is to extend off, as you said, really elegantly, Joanna, off their core proposition. So all Disney's product extensions were off safe, fun, and family. So if you go on a Disney cruise, it's a Disney experience. If you Harley Davidson released a perfume. Now, for those on the call that know Harley Davidson, a lot of people go rode hard, put away wet, and it failed spectacularly. And why it failed spectacularly was it had no relevance to the brand or their existing customer base.
I get that.
Failed. So that's why to your point there, you do have to do it from within your value proposition. But again, Richard Branson has done this with 8 different products.
Yeah.
Just on that, I've seen a example of that firsthand recently with a client who is a return to work provider. So they help injured people get back to work. And long story short, they were on an acquisition journey, as well as bolstering the value of what they were doing before they started acquiring businesses, and then went through, it's a listed business, and then went through a merger. And it's a bit of an iterative process. So to your question, Joanna, and also to Mark's point, they saw the value in acquiring a business in a related expertise.
Yeah.
So they were working with businesses helping prevent injuries, then manage injuries, then return workers to work, more physical injuries. Then there's psychological services businesses out there. They saw that as being a natural extension, like a product extension, if you will. But as they're extending into that product, they knew it was the right way to go because this was a growing part of the industry. It was a synergistic fit for them. So it made sense, to Mark's point about the Disney example. But as they extend out to that new product, they're also sort of double tracking a little bit and making sure that they're increasing their sales capability, if you will, and their delivery capability in the existing core products. Extending, but they're also bolstering what they've done as core products or services to that time. Iterative process, you can expand, and that's the bright, shiny sort of button, if you will, and it's always good to do that, but they're also reinforcing what they've done today.
And that's a really great example, I think, of how product extension can be achieved through acquisition, and that's the beauty of having your head around the acquisition. We've started this podcast by talking effectively about an exit mentality, which is thinking about what your value is at exit and increasing the multiplier of that, right? But here we're also talking about how acquisition can play into that as a whole. I think we've had some discussions about this. I think we've got a lot together to talk about in terms of acquisition as a growth strategy for business. So let's definitely come back to that in a future episode or two, where we can really drill into that more deeply. Well, that's it for this episode of Talking Law, where we drilled further into the second part of our 3-part series, all about the 6 steps to increase the multiplier of your business, i.e., the value of your business exponentially. Now, if you'd like more information about this topic, then head over to our website at talkinglaw.com.au. There you'll be able to download a transcript of this podcast episode if you want to read it in more detail. And there you'll also be able to find how to contact our very special guests, Marc Johnston from Sherlaws Group and Nathan Williams from Customer Return. On that website, you'll also be able to find out details of how to contact our lawyers at Aspect Legal if you or your clients would like assistance in helping to build solid foundations from a legal perspective in a business in order to support the growth of your business. We work with clients both big and small and have different types of services depending on size and complexity. So look, don't hesitate to head over to the website and find our free booking service there, where you can book yourself a free initial discussion with one of our legals at Aspect Legal. If you'd like to find out how we can assist your business or your clients' businesses in building the solid foundations from a legal perspective that are required to help ensure that they're properly set up for growth and to avoid those storms of business along the way. Well, that's it. Now, don't forget to tune in for our next episode, which is our last of this 3-part series, all about the 6 steps to increase the multiplier of your business. In order to do that, make sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast player so it can be delivered straight through to your podcast listening device as soon as we release it. That's it. Thanks again for listening in. You've been listening to Joanna Oakey and Talking Law, a podcast very proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time. Are you looking for a top quality legal team to assist you in your organisation? Aspect Legal is an innovative commercial legal practice that specialises in providing fast and professional services for their clients. If you'd like to chat about how we might be able to assist you, simply head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au to book in a time for a free discussion with one of our lawyers.
Thanks for listening to Talking Law. Tune in next time for more smart legal tips and tricks to keep you clear of those legal landmines. If you want to get a download of today's show notes, head over to talkinglaw.com.au.
Are you looking for a top quality legal team to assist you in your organisation? Aspect Legal is an innovative commercial legal practice that specialises in providing fast and professional services for their clients. If you'd like to chat about how we might be able to assist you, simply head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au to book in a time for a free discussion with one of our lawyers.